Welcome to Safford City Council meeting. Reminder, if you have a cell phone, would you mute it or turn it off? It's up to you. We have a full quorum. Our Pledge of Allegiance is going to be offered by Vice Mayor Richard Ortega, following our opening prayer by Pastor Ronnie Gonzalez of the Church at Safford. Would you stand with me and remain standing for the opening prayer as well, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this meeting. We thank you for this meeting. That's what we tonight. Father, your word says that we are to be anxious for nothing, to be unsettled for nothing, but in everything, with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, we're to make our requests known to you. When we do that, the word tells us that the peace of God, your peace, which surpasses even our own understanding, will rule and guard our hearts and our minds in Christ Jesus. So I thank you, Father, that we can open this meeting here tonight, this city council meeting, in prayer, looking to you first and foremost. As we do, Father, I pray for this city council. I ask you, Father, that you would give them the wisdom, the understanding, the discernment to make the wisest of decisions that would be the best, Father, for this city, for every resident in it. I thank you, Father, for everyone else who's here tonight. And I ask you, Father, for everyone who has something to bring forth to this city council, a request, whatever it might be. I ask you, Father, that you would bless them as well. That they too, Father, would do things for the betterment of the city, for the betterment of the residents here. And Father, I pray for a spirit of cooperation. I pray, Father, that there would be such a spirit here tonight, Father, that would honor you and would be for the best of this city. We thank you, Father, for this day. Your word says, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. So we thank you, Father, for this evening. We thank you for this city council. We thank you, Father. I pray that you bless these city council members. I pray, Father, that you keep them in health and in safety, that you would watch over every single day of their life. I pray for their families as well, God, that you would bless their families, Father, for being participants in this as well. Father, we just want to give you thanks today. We thank you for the city. We ask your blessings upon it. We pray that you would provide, Father, everything that is necessary that this city, Father, might be blessed in every way, that every resident in this city, God, would receive and experience, Father, the possibilities, Father, of a blessed city. Father, we commit it to your care tonight. We commit this city council to you. We ask for your blessings in every way, Father. Do so in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Pastor Ronnie, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I do want to acknowledge the council for continuing with the opening prayer. I know a lot of organizations have passed on that, but you guys have remained faithful to this, and I do believe we get blessed from that as well. And so once again, I want to thank you as the council. And that brings us to item 5, citizen comments on agenda items. I have some. Would you like to take those up during the actual agenda? Sarah, yes? Okay. And Vance, do you want to speak at the time when that's called as well? Okay. That brings us to item 6, which is citizen comments on non-agenda items. Mr. Bell, when you come up to the podium, would you please, your name and then your address, please?
Hi, my name is David Bell, 722 West 16th Street. I'm also a board member for the Downtown Association. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for hearing me. I want to thank the city for everything it did for the Chamber's Safford Spring Festival. It was a terrific event. Every vendor I spoke with, every attendee I spoke with, had nothing but praise. It was a great event, and the Chamber is to be commended as well. We did have one slight hiccup, though. The Wi-Fi didn't work, and Mr. Bryce can speak to that as well from the Chamber. I worked my wife's booth, and we had to use data to service our customers the whole time. I think it's time for the city to consider a permanent public Wi-Fi in the downtown area. I've mentioned this to Mr. Casella. He has said, rightly so, that the city needs to ensure security first, and he's correct. The city's system has to be protected. But if we're going to do more events, I would ask that you would consider discussion of a permanent public Wi-Fi, not just in front of City Hall, but the entire downtown area. Again, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, David. And once again, this is a non-agenda item, so we're not to respond to it, but I will definitely be bringing this back to the city council further on down in our agenda. So once again, thanks again. That brings us to item 7, which is a public hearing. Susan, will you come up and?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and Council to hold a public hearing on a text amendment of Title 15, Building and Construction, Chapter 1510, International Building Code, Section 1510-020, amendments to consider following a 2015 building code and any subsequent adopted codes as they relate to regulations and requirements for automatic sprinkler systems. This item was discussed at a council workshop on March 22nd, you may recall. Chapter 1510-020, City of Safford International Building Code amendments currently states that automatic fire sprinklers shall be required for occupancy areas of all new structures having a total floor area exceeding 7,500 square feet. It also applies to existing structures when building additions or alterations result in a gross floor area of 7,500 square feet or more, and then modifications within existing buildings when they affect 7,500 square feet or more of total floor area. In addition, the amendment states that this provision shall not exempt those structures and occupancies for which the currently adopted section or currently adopted edition of the International Building Code requires automatic fire sprinkler systems or automatic fire extinguishing systems for structures and occupancies with a total floor area less than 7,500 square feet. As I mentioned during the workshop, staff research, it appears that this requirement was first adopted in 1975 as an amendment to Appendix D of the 1973 Uniform Fire Code. This amendment was the result of a recommendation by the International Conference of Building Officials and the Western Fire Chiefs Association, and at that time the adopted amendment stated that automatic fire sprinkler systems shall be installed in any commercial building when the total floor area of a story exceeds 7,500 square feet. Reasons for this recommendation include the lack of sufficient fire flow and fire department responses in the western part of the country. So that's the origins of this that I could find through research. So the text amendment of the Safford Municipal Code requires a public hearing and the adoption of an ordinance. And on page 2, you have the actual amendments that are being proposed. And that is to remove A from Safford Municipal Code Section 15.10.020, and then there's a relettering of the following provisions. Basically B becoming A, C, B, D becomes C, and E becomes D. Staff is recommending to follow the most recently adopted building code requirements for sprinkler systems for commercial buildings. The current proposed building code has automatic sprinkler requirements based on type of occupancy, basically for what the purpose of the building is being used, the type of construction, and the square footage. And staff will be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Susan, I think this is long overdue, and I appreciate you bringing this back to the city for us to either adopt it or not, but it's definitely long overdue. Anybody else have anything? Okay. It is a public hearing, so anybody from the public would like to address us, please do. I don't see everybody anxious. I'm just going to move on. We've got a long meeting, so. And this is just our first public hearing, so we don't need any action tonight, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. We don't need to even read it in or anything like that. So after this, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and reconvene to our regular meeting. We're on item 9.1, ordinance 021-009. Susan, it's you again.
So this is a first reading of ordinance 021-009, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending City of Safford Municipal Code, Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 1510, International Building Code, and Section 15.10.020 amendments as it pertains to the 7,500 square foot requirement for automatic sprinkler systems. This is the first read.
Anybody have any discussion? Okay, go ahead with 9.2. You want to read that one? First read even? Go ahead.
Ordinance number 021-009, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending City of Safford Municipal Code, Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 15.10, International Building Code, Section 15.10.020, amendments as it pertains to the 7,500 square foot requirement for automatic sprinkler systems.
9-2.
This is a request for the mayor and city council to approve and adopt ordinance number 021-007, an ordinance of the city of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, rezoning Graham County Assessor's Parcel number 101-14-003D and 101-14-003E, located directly to the south of 1615 South First Avenue, from City of Safford AR Agricultural Residential to City of Safford C2 Highway Commercial.
Okay, anybody have any discussion at this time? Entertain a motion.
I move we approve ordinance number 021-007.
We have a motion, any discussion, or we need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks,
Thank you.
Susan. Item 10-1, minutes. Tammy?
It's into the minutes as well.
What's that?
That ordinance, I'm gonna go ahead and read it into the
Okay,
minutes as well.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ordinance number 021-007, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, effectuating a map amendment rezoning Graham County Assessor's Parcel number 101-14-003D and 101-14-003E from City of Safford AR Agricultural Residential to City of Safford C2 Highway Commercial.
Thank you. Will you go ahead and take on your next one, please?
So, Mayor and Council, I went ahead and brought the minutes for March 29th, 2021's work session. Did anybody have any questions on it?
No, sir. No?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Got a motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 10-2.
Mayor and Council, this is a request for a liquor license extension of premises from Sarah at the Sarah's Bullpen. They did do an extension in the back. They brought in a Connex box that is a permanent fixture back there that they did make a bar into it. And for that, they have to have an extension of premises from the Board of Liquor Licenses in order to serve back there. And I did check with Jaime as well too, and she did get all of her permitting and everything that she needed from the city to be having that Connex box back there in the back of the building.
Okay, thank you. Vance, would you like to speak to us at this time? Would you go ahead and your name and your address? You got great credit, your social security number too.
My name is Vance Bryce. I'm the Executive Director of the Graham County Chamber of Commerce, located at 1051 West Thatcher Boulevard in Safford. I would like to speak in support of the request to Mayor and City Council to make a recommendation to the Arizona State Liquor Board regarding an application for extension of premises and patio permit from Sarah's Bullpen, located at 912 West Thatcher Boulevard. With Sarah's new lighted mural and renovated patio, her business is visible evidence that your work to plant seeds to revitalize downtown is coming to fruition. Sarah gave me a tour of what she plans to do last week. Completion of her plans will allow for more capacity for an existing friendly and hospitable atmosphere for residents and visitors. I was in Globe to do a scouting trip 2 weekends ago, and there was a similar type thing going on there, and it was just a fun atmosphere on Globe's Broad Street, and I thought Sarah's right there on the highway with its friendly lights and everything going on, and people traveling, people driving, people wanting to do things now that things are open. That would bring some visitors in, some residents in, and she showed it to me last week. It's great. I want to note my gratitude for Sarah's Bullpen. They have a chamber membership, and her staff for donating their time to support community events like the Safford Spring Festival, and by offering servers for the Big Buck contest this Saturday. Please vote to make this recommendation.
Thank you. Sarah, would you like to, does anybody have any questions for Vance?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Sarah, would you like to speak? No? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is just an extension of the liquor license to the back, further back.
Correct. Yeah, so what this does is just extends the serving area, because her current liquor license just covers the building, and so the state board requires her to get this addition for the extension, just to be able to serve the alcohol on the back part of the premises.
And the Connex box is what you're serving out of? So that's also.
Sarah, would you, hang on one second. Sarah, would you go ahead and come on up, please? We have some questions for you.
Well, by the time you get up here, I'll probably be done with this. So the Connex box is also how you're gonna secure the liquor that's in the back of that
Yes.
property?
Yes, so half of it is the storage for the bar. And then the other half, we did a bar and then a back door, or a backyard bathroom. So that keeps more people out back, you know, with the governor's, you know, be aware, being more outside and stuff like that. I felt like this could be something that could help on top of the Connex, helping with our sound that we've stood in front of you guys before.
That was my main concern, that it was secure back there, because
Yes, yes.
that was it, Sarah, that's the main concern.
Any other questions?
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Sarah, I know that you've had a rough go, but you know what? You persevered, you fought,
Yeah.
and you got where you're at, and I commend you for that, and I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And you've always been in contact with me, and so, you know, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Sarah, thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Keep moving forward. Bring us to item 11-1. 14th, that's Lance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and Council to award the construction contract for 14th Avenue Street Improvements Project to Hatch Construction in the amount of $1,391,557.50. This project consists of the demolition and reconstruction of 14th Avenue from Relation Street intersection to the north edge of Stone Willow and Crimson Canyon Drive intersection. The finished project will include a 48 wide-foot asphalt concrete pavement road with curb gutter and sidewalk on both sides. Drainage improvements include road regrading, catch basin construction, and drainage culvert installation. The pavement section includes lime stabilization, soil, aggregate base course, and a 3/4 and 1/2 inch asphalt pavement section. The lime stabilization and aggregate base course will also be placed beneath the sidewalk and the curb and gutter as well. Staff advertised this project and solicited bidders in accordance with ARS formal bidding procedures. The notice for invitation to bids was published in the local newspaper. We had a mandatory pre-bid conference, which was held on May 24th and was attended by 7 prospective bidders. On April 13th, the city clerk received 3 bids that were publicly read with the following results listed there. Staff and Bowman Consulting have found that Hatch Construction is the lowest responsible bidder and is qualified to complete the work as specified in this project, and therefore staff is recommending award this to Hatch Construction in the amount of $1,391,557.50.
Lance, do we always have to go with the lowest bidder?
Yes, if they're qualified bidder. Yes.
Because we have a hometown guy here that's pretty dadgum close.
Yes.
And did you reach out to him?
Yeah, and if you read the backup material, they were second bidder, but their bid wasn't complete to begin with. They didn't supply their necessary documents that were required with the bid. But also, we do have our local preference. Doesn't apply to a project of this nature because there's so many subcontractors involved that they would all have to be qualified local bidders as well. And so a project of this size, it's almost impossible to have all local preferred bidders to get your local preference in a situation of this matter.
Did you get are you holding out a retainer on this project?
Yes, this will be our standard retention, just like we always do. We hold out 10% of each progress payment. We can hold that through the whole project, but at the end of the project, that is released. That's according to the state law. I've gone over this with Bill Sims as well. So up to a certain point, after 50% of the project's complete, the contractor can request us not hold any more retainage, and if everything's going good, we could do that and give them payments, but we hold that initial retainage until final payment.
So I know that I asked you in the past to come away with a bid program that actually secures at least for 90 days after the project is complete. You just decided not to do that?
We can't do that by state law. State law, our final payment we have to release to retainage. That's according to state law.
Okay, because
they are still responsible for the project up to a year afterwards, but we can't hold that money.
You Can't hold a retainer.
Now, if we pass off final completion, if there's still stuff to be done, obviously we'll hold that retainage until everything's been punch listed off, everything's completed. Once that's done and we sign off on it, we have to release that retainage.
Because I don't want another 8th Street job.
And by the way, we're still holding that retainage. We still have that money in our hand.
And have we done work with Hatch before?
Hatch did the work on Church Street, the surface improvements.
But we
Thatcher-
haven't done work with them. That was just
We haven't
Thatcher.
done it that I know of. I haven't worked with them personally, but they come highly recommended. Town of Thatcher, we asked them, were you happy? Extremely happy. In fact, we asked them if they had any change orders, and they didn't have any. So they've got extremely good recommendation, so I feel comfortable with them as well. And they are gonna buy the materials here locally. I mean, it's gonna help. They're gonna work with Tri-County, CKC, buying materials here locally. So it'll be a good project.
Okay.
It'll be an extremely accelerated schedule. We're gonna close that road right after school stops being in session. Got okay to close that with the school, shut the whole thing down, tear it out, and get it done in about 90 days. So, quick turnaround.
So you have approximately 452,000 left in the budget? From
Approximately.
what was,
Currently right now.
and you were proposing a while back of using that retention pond as a park. Yeah, your name?
Over by the school.
Yes.
Yeah, we're still talking about that
So
with
I was
the
wondering,
school.
would it be nice to have created a bridge across there and have an area that they can go over there and park so that could be utilized? Because there's Arnold, is there still a backstop in there?
There's still a backstop down in there, and that, where you're suggesting that the road get cut in there, that's our drainage. Or at
Yeah.
least that's where I think you're talking
Well,
about.
there's a bridge across that ditch.
Yes, and right where the drainage comes out of that, I think, we have an easement through there as it is, I would think.
We do, and just so you're aware, I've already started discussion with the school, and Mr. Casella's aware of this as well, and I've taken him around, and the school's on board to work with us as far as agreements to, instead of building a bridge, access it from the school side of the property and build something in there, a parking lot back on the north side of that retention where we could use both that retention and their field together, and that's kind of what we're working on right now. And we'll be in touch with you on where we're getting with that, but it's just getting started.
I guess I don't like the bureaucracy BS, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I want
That's-
to get things done.
They're on board with some sort of agreement, and we'll be bringing you some stuff
I
in
still
the
have
future.
3 backstops that are ready to be placed, so we
I still got them.
got some in
All right.
reserve. So you're saying local preference. If we have one subcontractor working with the general, that disqualifies them?
If that contractor is not local, a qualified
No.
local bidder.
No, just in general. Well, we're talking CKC back. here.
Well,
If the local preference, if you utilize a subcontractor that's not local, that disqualifies you from
it does
local
according to our
preference?
local preference policy. You're not allowed to
Oh.
subcontract out any of the project. So this isn't set up for a large construction
Mm-hmm.
project. It's more or less a smaller construction project, maybe a $100,000 sidewalk project or something where one contractor locally is doing it, then they
But
get that
maybe the
preference.
finished cement around the
Yeah.
police station, something like that?
Yeah, well, if it was just a bid alone project, and it's,
I didn't know that disqualified them like
Yep.
that. That's,
well, in this case, for example, these contractors had anywhere from 7 to 10 subcontractors listed, and we had lime stabilization companies coming out of the valley and milling machines, and there's specialty things that there's no local contractor here to do it, and they were gonna bring them in, and it'll be good. They'll stay here in our hotels and eat in our restaurants and buy our food in our grocery stores, and it'll be a good
that's a
project.
good idea.
I'm excited for it. I really want this one to go well, so.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the 14th Avenue Street Improvement Project awarded to the Hatch Construction in the amount of $1,391,557.50.
Second. A motion and a second. Any more discussion? You good, Arnold?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Morgan, you're up on 11-2.
Mayor and council, this is a request for the mayor and council to award the construction contract for the 2020-2021 manhole rehab project to Molina Contracting in the amount of $227,020.00. This project consists of the rehabilitation of 101 manholes in various stages of deterioration. The rehabilitation includes structural repair and epoxy coating system application. This project encompasses the area between 8th Street south to 20th Street and from 20th Avenue east to First Avenue.
So moved.
Have a motion? Can I hear a second? Okay. Any discussion? Go ahead on.
When do you think we might be having them all done? One year we put it on hold. Can't remember the exact reason, but we put it on hold. When are we gonna get them all addressed?
So, Mayor, Councilman Lopez, the goal was kind of to do 100 manholes per year. I'm continuing some manholes, but what I want to do is I actually want to look at the manholes themselves in areas that do have hydrogen sulfide deterioration and assess them and get them recoated, and then look at other manholes, and if they don't need to be recoated, then I don't feel like we should be recoating them. So I don't think we will be, what I want to say is that I'm going to be going through the system and to evaluate each manhole and assess if we actually need to do them or not.
You're going after the ones that steps have already been ate up.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Any more discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Morgan, 12-2. John? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead with the sprinkler
Sorry, I'm not
system,
giving this
Morgan.
mic
My
up.
bad. Dang. 12-1.
So, Mayor and Council, this is a recommendation to remove the current fees associated with the fire sprinkler systems. Businesses that exceed a determined threshold based on the type of construction, square footage, and occupancy are required to install fire sprinkler systems. In 1997, fire protection fees were adopted and structured with 3 options. It has been determined that these fees are undesirable and unwarranted. Staff recommends the removing of all fees associated with fire sprinkler systems to all current businesses actively paying and any future businesses that required to install such systems.
I move we approve resolution number R 21-010.
We have a motion.
Second.
And that's true, Councilman McGoy. It's about damn time. We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I'm not touching this one.
You're not going to touch this one?
We've batted this one around for years, and I'm glad it's.
I'm glad that Morgan, that you went ahead and bit the apple and realized what I think some of us have been saying for a long time, and I appreciate you for that, and I commend you for that as well. Motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, let's go for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you.
All right, John, now you're up.
Thank you.
Big parklets.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. We're seeking adoption of Resolution 21-011, and all this resolution does essentially is to increase the opportunity to have a fee on the parklets of $5 a square foot. Originally, the amount was 50 cents. And so in light of the conversation that we had on that night concerning cost recovery, and also in light of the Shires case that recently came through the Arizona Supreme Court, when we build parklets now, we're looking for full cost recovery. We'll still be able to maybe put some money in on the front end for it, but the fee now will be of a sufficient magnitude that within a relatively short period of time, any amount of money that's owed on the parklet for construction would be covered more quickly by the increased fee. So this gives us that flexibility.
Okay, need a motion?
I'll move we approve resolution R 21-011.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
We had things in place, and then you discovered that we needed to charge some for it, because you say you re-advertised the fee. So is this something that suddenly came out to the people that might be participating?
Mayor Councilman Lopez, it didn't suddenly come out. It was really an option that we pursued originally based on the conversation we had about cost recovery, and that the fee was so low that you would be paying back for an extended period of time. So when we originally re-advertised it, we were simply giving ourselves an option to be able to have the ability to charge a different fee depending on the initial agreement. So if someone paid less up front, then you would charge them more to get the money back on the other end. So all we're doing is giving ourselves the option to be able to charge up to $5 a square foot. And again, it would be dependent on the parklet itself. I mean, ultimately, we own them. We get fully reimbursed for them. Someone may pay up front and just do it all in one shot, and then the fee would be lower. So it's really, all we're doing is giving ourselves an option. So anybody applying to do a parklet would know that depending on how we negotiate that agreement, we have flexibility to go up to $5. Doesn't mean it has to be $5. It means it could be that high, and we would determine that as we sat down and negotiated each individual agreement.
So there'll be different timeframes.
Yes.
Mr. Casella, did we have any more people come forward that wanted?
Mayor Counts, Councilman Andazola, not at this point, no. We did have some people who showed an interest, but at this time we didn't. And there was a program for a while. It's closed now, but the state was providing additional funding to help them build those parklets. So again, the opportunity was there for them, and we made them aware of that opportunity to help get them funded. So, but at this time, we had one applicant.
Are we gonna get our end of it done in time so that anybody that had monies to utilize on this is gonna be able to get it done?
Mayor Counts, Councilman Lopez, yes, we should be able to get that. All the people need to do is to turn in the receipts to the state for their reimbursement, if you're asking about the grant portion.
Yes,
Yeah, we should be okay on the one we're doing.
okay.
Yeah,
We're not holding anybody up.
no,
You know, this is it's a great opportunity, and we know that we know who's the first party to do this, and I think it's going to benefit them very well, and it's going to look really good on that corner. I voted against the parklets to begin with because I don't want to lose any parking. Once again, when you drive down Central, you see the City of Safford trash cans on Central Avenue that's housing most of those businesses there. We really should be addressing that issue as well, so that they don't have, like, city, I don't know, somehow that issue needs to be addressed. I mean, who wants to see a black trash can out on a sidewalk? That's something that we should be addressing while we're trying to beautify downtown and make these parklets for these businesses to use. So I really wish you'd get together with the businesses and ask for some input, for some remedy as well, see what we can do. You know, maybe take a couple of those parklets out, not parklets, but parking spots out of the place that Freeport employees use for parking, and put, you know, some covered bins up there so they can, you know, I mean, I know it sucks that they'd have to walk that far to throw their trash away,
well, Mayor
but maybe
Counts,
they could wheel them.
we have a couple in the CIP this year, I believe,
Okay.
on either end of the downtown. One will be on that end, Lance is standing up. Yeah,
Go
so I
ahead.
think that's part of what we're.
I know I'm
already
kind
working
of really stretching what I'm wanting to talk about within the parklet, but I mentioned it, that's
Yeah,
why I got
yeah,
away with it.
yeah.
Part of our CIP, we do have two locations, one in Central, in that ADOT parking, which needs ADOT
Okay.
approval, and that's in our budget to do that one for sure. And then I want to get with the county and see if we can do one in that probation office parking lot there on that end and get rid of the cans at both ends of town.
Okay.
That's in our CIP. We want to
And
do that.
maybe that they could continue to use the black boxes so they can wheel them instead of having to drag a
Well,
nasty old big old black container.
I know
or-
Jenny's tired of the cans being out there. She's the one that keeps pushing. She wants
Yeah.
that container across the road. I think her employees are all for just carrying the trash over
Perfect,
there.
I think
so.
that would be tremendous. Thanks,
Yep.
John, and that is in the CIP.
It's in our
for-
current CIP
that
and
we
this
could
year's budget
Move this year,
that we're going to approve, yeah.
but we can move this year with it,
As soon as you approve the budget, I
Is it
can,
in year one, I think is what he's asking.
but we can move it in 2021. We could get that project done, because it shouldn't be. but
oh, yeah, July
couple
1, when we
thousand
got the
bucks.
money, we can start on that.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Go ahead.
One more footnote, I'm hoping you make sure the lighting there too, because they're gonna be staying open longer.
Yeah, they are.
And those employees walk to their vehicles and stuff, and I wanna make sure they're safe,
We'll make sure
as
that
much
those-
as we can.
Yep, as much as we
Okay.
can.
All right. We already had the motion and all that, right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 2112, Lance?
All right, Mayor and Council, this is a request to approve Resolution R21-012, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a property lease agreement with Richard and Ramona Lyons for property located on 20th Avenue adjacent to the city-owned parcel leased to the Mountain Graham Safe House. Due to the upcoming 20th Avenue renovation project, the parking on Relation Street between Golf Course Road and Relation there is limited to off-street parking only once this project's done. The city-owned parcel leased to the Mount Graham Safe House currently only has on-street parking on 20th Avenue. Tenants and employees have been using the gravel street, on-street parking there, as well as the adjacent property owned by the Lions. Staff has proposed a long-term lease to the Lions to use the adjacent property solely for the purposes of driveway access and parking of vehicles. The agreement would be for a period of 10 years with the potential of 2 ensuing 5-year extensions, or until the Mountain Graham Safe House is no longer there. Compensation for the lease agreement would be a control burn of the structure there, removing it, and putting a gravel surface down for parking. Also, new driveway entrances to the property would be installed as part of the 20th Avenue project. Staff is recommending approval and adoption of this resolution, R21-012, entering into a property lease agreement with the Richard and Ramona Lines. Have any questions on this?
So that if you're facing the safe house, it's on the right-hand side.
So this
That
is
house,
directly
right?
south, that old rundown building directly south of the safe house.
I move we approve resolution R21-012.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thanks, Lance. All right, Alma.
Can you give her 3 minutes?
Huh?
Can you give her 3
Yeah, start the 5-minute timer.
I saw everybody's excitement when he said that. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight, we're going to continue reviewing the fiscal year 2022 budget. At the last meeting, I was asked a couple of questions, and so I wanted to begin by addressing those questions. So on page 53 of your council packet, there's a chart that summarizes the request for changes in personnel. So I'm going to begin there. So the fleet is requesting a new FTE. Again, the fleet department was a department of 4. They reduced down it's been a few years ago. They reduced down to 3 when one retired and was not replaced, and staff is requesting for that position to be filled again. That would increase the budget by $70,000. The IT is requesting for their temp GIS technician to become a regular full-time GIS. They are currently full-time, but they are temp. This would not change the budget. They've been temp for the last 2 years, so this would not change the budget. Landfill, sanitation, building maintenance, building safety, and city manager are all reclasses. So they're already existing employees, and so those would just be minimal increases to the budget. The fire chief is not a reclass, but staff is requesting an increase in salaries of $5,970. That includes benefits. All line items do include the benefits. Staff would also like to propose that the fire chief and the assistant fire chief, who recently began reporting to the city manager and are different than the volunteer firefighters, be included in the longevity program going forward. So that is a discussion we would like to have with council.
So Alma, on the assistant fire chief, is that a position that is being reimbursed right now?
Mayor Couts, yes, the assistant fire chief is receiving a salary of $5,000 a year.
Okay.
If council has any questions regarding any of the personnel changes, the individual department managers are available to answer any questions as well.
So how do we come up with $5,970 on the fire chief?
That is $5,200 in salaries, and then the remainder is his benefits.
The what is?
Benefits.
Benefits?
Yes.
I don't remember talking about the longevity.
We did.
We did talk about the longevity. I don't know if we want to say that, but go ahead.
And I just want to make sure you understand that we are proposing in this that we use that same step program for the assistant fire chief. It wasn't something that we agreed on at the time. We haven't added it in yet. But we feel that because of the two positions are somewhat unique but similar to each other, that moving them along in the stipend, in the steps, would be the way to go from an administrative standpoint. And so we are proposing that we also do that with the assistant fire chief, but we have not put it in it yet, as yet. We're waiting to find out what your response is. Just so you know, that's something new, and I didn't want to put it in ahead of time.
Is the fire chief, are they assisting in the billing codes at all?
I think that's I don't know if Clark's here, if he can answer that.
Do you do any reviews of the fire suppression system? Okay, so you do have involvement then? Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take off if nobody else has any questions on that.
Okay. The other question that was brought up from council at the last meeting was regarding the training and travel. So I've provided in your packet on page 54 just a summary of the training and travel. Gives you the percentage of training and travel versus our total operating budget. You can see that it is minimal. The general fund does have some additional funding. Included in there is for a possible police recruit that would go to the police academy. And so that is a large portion of the general fund travel and training. Are there any other questions regarding travel and training?
Until we get to the punch cards.
Okay, keep on going.
Okay, so as I go through each individual department, I'll scroll to the summary pages and speak to significant changes, but if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask. So we'll begin with planning and community development. Salaries and benefits decreased due to filling a vacant position at a lower rate than a seasoned employee. Operations also reduced. These funds are reduced in special projects. These funds are utilized for professional design services for special projects for parks, multi-use paths, and other related projects. Do you have any questions with planning and community development? Okay, and building safety. Salaries and benefits, again, includes the reclassification for the building inspector. And in operations, there is no change. Any questions in building safety?
So building safety, the planning and zoning checks building safety, and in our maintenance department, they also go around checking the buildings too?
Mayor Councilman Lopez, building safety is our building inspectors that inspect other buildings. They follow the city or the international building codes. The building maintenance is specifically employees who are doing maintenance within the city buildings and parks and facilities, but it's all related to city facilities and maintaining our facilities. Okay. In recreation, salaries and benefits did increase. There was an increase to the minimum wage effective January of 2021, so that's reflected. And their operations reduced by $5,000, which was moved to the city council budget.
You know, I know that there's been some heartburn on some of this, but I spoke with Mr. Ragland, and the schools has kind of stopped him from a league playing because of the insurance. And I know you got that phone call as well. So I really would like for us to be really seriously thinking about that sponsorship so that it covers under our umbrella so that those kids can play. I don't, unless this council has heartburn against that, but I think it's just shows that we're interested in these kids. So I don't know if we need to bring that back at a council meeting and talk about that, but I mean, it's kind of within this area, and we're talking about a junior league basketball. That's why this went up.
Mayor, members of council, yeah, we would have to look at that. I don't think we've used any insurance in the past. We don't cover his league or leagues of that type, right?
We have not, no, but we could definitely look into it to see what it would take
Had
to cover it.
Had it been covered when Ed was even on the council?
For the insurance part, no. He's always had to come in and sign like a volunteer form as being like a volunteer for the city of Safford, which covers more him and not necessarily the kids or the league itself.
Okay.
So I could definitely look into that and check with our insurance and see what it would take to know if it's even possible for us to cover the league itself, if that's what you're wanting to do.
Is that something that's gonna run over when we participate with the school in some of these other
Right.
projects that we have coming up?
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, it might. You know, I was having some conversations with Heath over in Thatcher too, and I think they use some of their insurance to cover some of the activities. So depending on how we write the agreements and what we're looking at, it could be part of that as well.
I mean, when we have facilities on our grass lawn, doesn't our umbrella cover a lot of that as well as the event that's having it too?
They have to provide like an indemnify, I can't even say the word, but they have to provide basically that we're secondary for their insurance, for them to be out there.
Right.
So they have to carry their own insurance with that, and they have to sign a release from us as well.
Okay.
Indemnify.
Indemnification.
Okay.
Okay.
In the golf course, we currently have the contract with OB Sports for their annual fee of $175,000. The contract doesn't include the cost of the annual property insurance and some of the utility expenses, and so the additional $15,000 is to cover those. And those are estimated based on the prior year's actuals.
Are we, when we've been talking about, and I said, I'm sorry, guys, I said I wasn't gonna talk, didn't I, Vice Mayor? But when we were talking about recreation, we had mentioned something about doing some help down there. I remember even the Vice Mayor had mentioned something about, you know, doing some sprinkler I think, unless I'm misspeaking. And so, I mean, if we're only just gonna budget $15,800, how are we ever gonna fix anything out there?
Mayor, council, members of council, I think the sprinkler system itself is something that we're gonna see if we can get some grant funding for. I think that there's some monies available, and again, whether we get all or part of it, I think that would help us, and that's a fairly pricey project. Most of the remaining capital projects are things that we simply cover as a matter of course and really comes out of the general fund. So we have to fix what's out there as needed. And again, we just renegotiated that contract, so we don't really get a lot of assistance for capital projects. We get some in-kind money for utilities, but that's really the bulk of the money we receive. And I think they do once in a while do some additional things with golf carts, but for the most part, we pay for it. So when we look at a project that's as big as the sprinkler system, there's a couple options. One is that we apply for a grant and we see if we get the grant, and see where it goes. And two, if we don't, then we might want to look at, you know, some of the other participants that utilize the golf course and discuss some kind of cost sharing on that project. Because it is, I think, at least $1.5 million, I think, to redo that. So I think, again, either we get a grant or we seek some assistance from some of the other users at that point, because it's a big ticket item.
You said that utilities and something else weren't in here.
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, that is correct. A portion of the utilities and also the property insurance is not included in there.
At this time, are you looking for ways to come up with funds, you know, like talking with other people that utilizes the golf course?
Mayor Counts, Vice Mayor Ortega, I think that discussion probably was had at some time in the past. The reaction wasn't really positive. It's not necessarily someplace that we want to go, but again, depending on the way we approach the recreational amenities and what kind of monies we have flowing in, it might be a discussion that we would have and take a look at. I mean, I'm not taking anything off the table.
Yeah. I think it would be something that we should look at, because a nice golf course will attract people. You know, it'd be an asset to you know, the community and the valley.
And also, we would, you know, with a new sprinkler system, we would save on effluent as well. And again, the effluent right now is something we supply to the golf course, and if we were to bill that, you're talking millions of dollars in effluent that we use to water the golf course. So, again, the city makes a lot of contributions in that regard. I think it's a great recreational amenity to have. We need to maintain it. But again, we may want to revisit, how we pay for some of it.
All right, moving on to the airport. The airport has increased in professional services $15,000, and this is to hire a consultant to assist with updating airport rules and regulations, as this is a specialized area. Also, the motor pool has increased with the purchase of the sweeper, and now there being replacement cost for that. Any questions on the airport?
It increased, you're estimating an increase in 70,000? Is that what I read?
Correct.
At the
Yes.
airport?
Mayor Councilman Lopez, that is correct. And some of that is also due to the increase in projects, and so there's an increase in the internal service for engineering services as well. Just gonna scroll down to that. So yeah, the internal services engineering has increased $30,000, and that's due to the services that engineering department will be needed during the projects. Currently in capital projects, we have about $2 million budgeted for next year, most of that being grant funded, but our engineering department will still be utilized. Okay, moving on to economic development. In the economic development, staff is recommending that we continue to waive the building permits for contractors, that we continue to provide a subsidy of 50% of the water capacity fees for single-family homes only for the individual purchasing the home, and to also continue 100% of the sewer capacity fee waiver for residential customers who choose to abandon an existing tank and connect to the city's collection system. Currently, with the Shires case, we don't know exactly what we'll be able to do next year, but our attorney has advised us to continue as normal. And so we are still going to include these in the budget. Okay, going on to the police. In the police, the salaries and benefits, there is an increase. We've included in the benefits retirement for PSPRS for officers who are on the DROP program. It's not required to pay that, but if we choose to use a bond to pay off the unfunded liability, we would shift this expense to a debt service. Otherwise, we would, if we choose not to go with a bond, we would just apply this extra funding and do an extra payment to our PSPRS to help bring that unfunded liability down. In the operations, there is a 3% increase in our IGA with the county for animal shelter, and there's a 5% increase with the IGA for the dispatch. In professional services, they have an increase for a legal advisor to review their policies and procedures as well. And there's some other minor increases in other operating expenses, if there's one you'd like to go into specifically. Can answer any questions on those.
I thought we'd get an explanation on the IGA with the animal and 9/11, that it goes up 3% just about every year, and that's a little hard to bite sometimes.
I'll allow Glenn to answer that question.
Said he'd have it next week.
Mayor and Council, Councilman Lopez, the 3% for animal control is a contract amount that was signed a number of years ago before I was here. This is the last year of that contract, so it'll be renegotiated next year. Dispatch went by 5%, same thing, contract that was signed 4 or 5 years ago. This is the last year with that contract. The county asked for 8% this year in dispatching, and thank goodness we had this contract. So we're going to see where that ends up in that cost when it's done.
Yeah, because ours goes up every year. And I know we locked in the agreement for so many years, but it was automatic, like 3%, on both of them, and
So-
without explanation.
So on the contract, sorry, Councilman Lopez, Mayor, the contract was 2% for animal control the first 2 years, 3% the last 3 years. Dispatching was 3% the first 2 years and 5% the last 3 years. And that's where we're at now. We're right at the end of that. This is our last year on that contract. And where it goes, the dispatching animal control cost was based on how much we use it, and our population, calls for service, those kind of things. So a lot of that depends on what's going on in Safford. Because of the business hub of the community, we answer quite a few more calls than any other entity, and we're involved quite a bit more than that.
Well, I hope we negotiate better with them on the next one, because just taking that on without even looking into it, the whys or all that, it just, and, you know, what the reasoning is behind all that, that we always have that much increase.
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, and Council, prior to this contract, it was a variable amount every year. And I know in previous years it went anywhere from 0 to 10 and 12%. So it just depends, and so the idea of locking into this contract is we at least knew for the budget each year what it would be. And that was part of the idea behind it, I believe, when it occurred. It was, like I said, it was prior to me, but I was involved and around during the time. And it was based on the average over a number of years of where we had been, and that's where that contract average came from.
I think you guys know what I mean.
I appreciate it.
I think you know what I mean. Please look into it.
We will.
We will.
Arnold, they had to take care of that pig.
That pig,
That's why it went up.
that pig still,
No place for it to go.
I'm not bringing that one up, but it has a home right now
All
too,
right.
the one that got loose.
Anything for the police? Can we move on?
I'm done for now. I got to ask him some questions earlier on.
Okay, moving on to the fire department. So the fire department does include the increase to the fire chief's salary of $5,970. The fire district does supplement 50% of all our operating expenses for the fire department, and that does include salaries. Are there any questions on the fire department?
When was the last time the firefighters got a raise?
Mayor Couts, I'll have to look into, Ms. Clark, no, 2 years? It's been about 2 fiscal years.
Maybe they need to be on a plan where they get a raise every 5 years or something.
Mayor, council, members of council, I think that doesn't apply in the sense of the, you know, they're volunteers and
Okay.
the way it's built. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
All right.
Okay, Public Works Admin and Salaries and Benefits there was a change to personnel, and so that is the majority of the increase. The position also changed when they hired the new person, and so there was an increase in duties as well. In operations, there was minimal change. Any questions on Public Work Admin? Next department is building maintenance. And again, building maintenance is maintenance within facilities of the city of Safford. There's an increase of $16,000. This does also include the reclass of a current facility maintenance worker to a lead facility worker. And it also includes upgrades to the city hall restrooms. Any questions on building maintenance?
I'd had a question on the fiber, but I got it answered earlier, so I'm good
on to the Parks Department. In the Parks Department, operations has increased, has a minimal increase of $2,000. The majority of the increase is within the internal services, and that's due to having multiple capital projects, and so engineering charges have increased.
So explain that to me. Is engineering actually doing something
Yes.
to cause that kind of an increase?
Mayor Couts, the way that we do the process for the engineering is an internal service department. The entire department is funded by other departments, and it is based on projects. So the entire listing of the capital is sent to our engineering department, and they tell us how much of the project is done within the engineering, from the engineering department, and that's how the funds is split up.
So engineering designs the parks and tells them how to
And each
do a
project,
sprinkler system or what?
Mayor Couts, each project is done differently, and so each project will have a different amount of, Lance will explain. I'll allow him to explain.
Alma did a good job explaining it, but for example, in parks, we've got dry lake shade structure that'll be engineered in-house and implemented in-house. We've got, what else we got in parks this year? So it's just based on how many projects we have. I think we've got that cemetery entrance feature that we added this year. That'll be a completely internal design and implementation. So it depends on, obviously if we're gonna go out and outsource the engineering on something, we're not gonna internally charge for that. It'll be a minimal charge because we just review it. So it's based on how much involvement the engineering department is in CAD drawings and that kind of stuff with each project. So this one we have quite a few little parks projects that would be part of the engineering cost of this budget. So dry lake improvements, El Paso Park, we have a little carryover in that one, but then also the cemetery entrance that I mentioned before. So it's all based on the amount of the involvement in the engineering department.
Okay.
I hope that clears that up a little bit.
Okay, and the Streets Department. Oh. That was weird. So in the Streets Department, there is a decrease in the Streets Departments, and the reason for that is because there are only two projects in the streets, well, two major projects, the 14th Avenue, 20th Avenue. So their projects have decreased in the current year, and therefore the engineering cost has been reduced for them. I apologize, my iPad is really...
You want me to do it?
Yeah, if you want to go on there, that's... Also, I do want to mention in the Street Surf Department, within the Operations Department, we have the 50/50 sidewalk program, which has been moved from the CIP to Operations, and for the amount of $5,000, and this is based on previous usage of the program. Since we hadn't been using it to the capacity, it went unutilized. We altered it and we built it in within the operations.
So it is still 50/50. I'll just contact the resident and have that question. We are still 50/50.
Mayor Couts, Councilman Lopez, that is correct.
You just lowered it to 5,000 instead of something else. Okay.
Yes. Any other questions on the Street Surf Department? That's all I have on budget.
Okay, Alma.
Yes.
We're always talking a lot about, you're always talking reclass. So is reclass, I'm just going to come out with this. Reclass just because a supervisor feels like an employee is underpaid and therefore he wants to raise his pay. And so we're going to reclass that individual so he can get a better pay. Ultimately, that's what you're doing. Go ahead, John.
Mayor, Council, members of council, the reclasses are predicated on the job activities, right? So, for example, I can use Matthew as an example. when we hired Matthew as an executive assistant, the job description had listed certain activities that that position would perform. As we move forward, and we knew that there were areas in the organization where there were needs that we've discussed as a group, Matthew showed the ability to fill those needs. And so as we began to add those things on to his activities, you start to have someone who is doing duties that resemble a different job classification. So the reclass is really predicated not so much just on providing the salary increase, it's predicated on the services rendered, if you will. It's predicated on the duties performed, because every job has a classification that lists the duties that they do. So when people begin to kind of move into different areas to a degree where you start to look at them and say, well, they may have come in under one category, but based on what they're actually doing, they essentially belong in another one. So the salary increase is a byproduct of those activities.
Okay, so like, as a lead man position here, you know, I'll just pick on street since they're the last guy. You know, you ask for an increase or whatever because we're taking basically a regular street maintenance worker and we're putting them into a lead maintenance worker or something, right? Is that what you're saying? That's the reclass.
And I think that was the request.
Because he's
and I
been
think it's-
doing lead man work, and so
Right.
therefore the supervisor feels like that guy needs to be moved up to a
Right.
lead man.
And that person can replace the supervisor if they're out. Plus, we're already doing it in certain areas of the organization, so now we're kind of mirroring what we're doing throughout the organization so that we're doing the same types of activities and we're giving the same type of compensation for everybody that's providing those services.
So you can have more than one lead man on any specific any specific division.
That I don't know, that's a Lance question.
Yes.
Let's just pick on building maintenance.
Yeah, we won't pick on street. Streets already has a current lead man in position. We have a supervisor, a lead, and then we have street maintenance workers. But as far as facility maintenance, solid waste, landfill, those are the ones I'm actually requesting the lead position in. That's more or less to be in line with our other divisions. We actually have people acting in that capacity. They're skilled. They show leadership skills. We're not paying them for the abilities they provide for us. It's something that people tend to progress into naturally. And if we've got that step in our program to where they could naturally step into a lead position, it takes a little bit off the supervisor, where if you got multiple projects going, you can have a lead man running one, the supervisor can run one. As John mentioned, they can step into the role as a supervisor in their absence. It also just provides a little bit of, they can help train the younger staff as a lead person. They're not all the basic workers. It just gives you a little bit more step to that program. But to answer your question, there is only one lead position, one supervisor position, and then the rest of the staff.
In most of your
In any
divisions?
division, in any division.
Okay.
Mhm.
So if somebody goes above and beyond in the lead man position, he or she has to wait her turn to be able to become a supervisor until a supervisor retires, is what you're
Yeah.
saying.
You basically would go to the lead and then to the supervisor level in that same division.
So you would be against having two lead men within one division? I mean,
Well, it
if
depends
an
on the
employee
size-
shows that kind
depends
of
on the
leadership,
size of the
why can't they
division.
go up to it?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the division. If our, for example, street division, if we get fully staffed to where we've got the full 10 employees, we could possibly need two lead men in that capacity. But in a division of 5 guys, supervisor, a lead, and then 3 workers, it's more than adequate.
Okay.
Just depends
All
on
right.
the size of the division.
I just want us to always think outside the box, because I don't want to leave us any one man behind waiting his quote-unquote turn to
Yeah.
progress. If somebody's already there and they're progressing, there's no reason why we should not progress them.
Yep. No, I agree
You know,
with you. Agree with
money's, as far as that goes, I think sometimes, respectfully saying this, I feel like we waste money on different areas when we could be not wasting money towards our employees, but giving them that incentive of accepting their leadership roles.
I agree with you.
Okay, thanks.
Does they have other budget questions?
Anybody have any more questions on the budget? You guys, we good? All right, I think we're right on the P reports. Arnold, do you have anything on the P card?
Yes. On page 96, we Dana Kempner Company. We got into the $6,000, $5,000 range, which is a little high for P cards, I would think. That's usually on the 5,000 one, but they, 5,000 on one of them, and then a credit of 9,000 for another, but then this shows up again in the 5,000, 6,000 area too, so that's, I don't know if we paid for it and we're gonna get back money again too.
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, so we did pay those invoices and we are getting we did get the credit back. Because it was, the first transaction was over 5,000, we still have to include it on our 5,000 report. But yes, we are going to get credit, and there were some issues with that purchasing, when they purchased some of those meters and items. There was a discrepancy when the material was received, and so Dana Kepner did refund us for some of that.
Because it does show up on the 5,000 also, so I don't believe you paid them twice.
No, we did not. That is correct. So, yeah, we had to discuss this prior, and so anything that's on the P card report that's over 5,000 will also show on your 5,000 report, but it is the same transaction. And if you look at the over 5,000 report, it does say have a reference number of MC, which means MasterCard, and so that would also, that's how you know that it's on both reports.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Revenues, did you have to look at that? Okay, did we look at the expenses over 5,000? Mike, was your computer on that one?
Yeah, it was.
It was, okay. I'm sorry, just gotta make us smile sometimes. Anybody have anything on the expenses over 5,000? Going once, going twice, all right, we're moving on. Announcement of current events. Anybody have anything on current events?
Mayor, we have the invitation tomorrow shows garden ribbon cutting on Saturday, this Saturday, 10 a.m.
Okay.
I'll be there to,
Would you post it just in case? Thank you, Tammy. You're awesome. I don't care what Brad says about you. Also, John, is there anything we could possibly be considering with public Wi-Fi? I don't know about the, how far down for it to reach, but, I mean, if we do have big things on city lawn, I don't know that it should be on 24/7, but during the, events, I think that would be a great opportunity for it to be turned on and then, also be, shut off, because, I mean, it's for the it's for the use of that, not necessarily for the use of just, anybody, any business or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
I want it to be used for the public, for the venues that are happening down on at least in front of City Hall. That, you guys like that idea, at least there, to start there with it? I know we have some, I know that the coverage could be broadband down, but I think it hits a stalemate or something, so. I know
Mayor, Council-
IT's coming, I don't know if we can talk about that now, or if he has to wait.
Well, I just wanted to let you know that when I was approached on the Wi-Fi, initially the discussion was that Valley Telecom was interested in providing Wi-Fi.
I
in
didn't get that
downtown.
either.
Yeah, and so when they came to me with that, I went to Sam and I said, hey, can you reach out and touch base and see what the discussion's going to be? He did do that, and no one ever scheduled a meeting. So in terms of the initial discussion that started the evening off, my understanding that Valley Telecom was going to do something with Wi-Fi in the downtown, and nothing ever materialized. As to actually physically putting it in, I know we can do that, but I'll let Sam run with it.
Okay, and then, so something like that is if I'm a venue down there, I pay Valley Telecom X amount for just that one day or for 24 hours of Wi-Fi, is that?
My understanding was they weren't charging anything, they were just going to provide it, there wasn't going to be a fee. That was the initial discussion that was brought to my attention.
Kind
And
of their
again-
public service? Go ahead.
Right.
No, that's 100% correct, yeah. I don't have anything beyond that.
So
Yeah.
you just need like a power pole or something to hook
Yeah,
it up to?
so like this last event, we did have Wi-Fi set up out there, so I'm curious as to what problems they had, so.
Maybe they didn't have the security, I don't know, but I think it's a great opportunity for
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, and we can set up something more permanent up on top of City Hall that would broadcast down there, and we can turn it on and off as needed.
As needed, yeah.
So,
I don't know that it didn't affect how they paid, also with cards, if they needed the Wi-Fi for that.
typically, most vendors have their own, they usually use like a cell service to do that. So, you know, whatever they're using, they usually have something set up already. So I would doubt that they would utilize us for their internet connection. But I don't know that for sure, but that's most of the people that I've seen that have that type of system, they do have their own that they're set up
I
with.
think that's what he meant when he said he was using data, that he couldn't write ours. But,
Right.
so if the other people do it, Cellular One, they're gonna take care of the security issues too?
With Valley Telecom,
Yes.
that would probably be them, yeah.
I wouldn't want us to have that
Right,
security problem.
and we would need to get into more discussions on that, like, you know, Mr. Casella said that we were on board with meeting with them and then it just got dropped, so nothing ever happened from there. So we're definitely want to talk to them and see what they have in mind, and we will definitely work with them, but
So you could pick up, Sam, you'll pick up that torch and run with it again, try it again?
yeah, I can reach out to them again or
Yep.
just, you know,
John,
see
is
if
that
they
good?
want to.
Yep.
I'm sorry, John, would you see if Sam would do it?
No, we'll have the
But I
discussion.
agree
And quite frankly, to me, it's 2021, Wi-Fi is almost like another recreational amenity, right? So, I don't know if we have it, do we have it in the parks as
But it's
well?
not
Or
infrastructure.
no?
Currently, we do.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy.
Bring this back at a later date for an
Yeah.
update or something for discussion, but
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
But we're
you.
getting way too far into this discussion.
What did you do? Oh, boy, did you throw something at her to tell me to shut up?
Tell me to shut up. She gave me that.
You
number.
got it, John, thank you. Anybody have anything on current events besides that? Go
I
ahead.
think it was a wonderful weekend.
Yes, it
There was
was.
a lot
It
of
was
people
too.
out, they were
Okay.
wanting to get out, and I think we hit some numbers as far as I think Vance told me, surpassed Salsa Fest the first day, so it was really nice, weather was great.
Perfect. Mayor, I have one thing for Mr. Henry. I want to say thank you for handling the park situation. And I hope everything turned out okay after.
I don't think we caught anybody yet, but we're okay.
Okay, well,
And while you're on current events, if you don't mind me, I reached out, an email to all of you last week. Mrs. Joyce Porter donated that drinking fountain at the swimming pool. I know we're not gonna be able to get all of you there, but I'd like to have a small dedication, presentation to her, possibly next week. If we could maybe come up with a day or something. She'd like to do it in the morning, so it's not so hot. Tuesdays are bad, so if there's a day next week that works for most of you, we just do something there at the pool and have whatever can make it, and the press, and maybe the pool manager, and do a little ceremony there so we can get the dedicatory plaque up on above there. She donated $5,200 for the purchase of that drinking fountain with the water bottle filler, which was very generous. And I've been wanting to do something for a while, but she's been very timid with COVID, and still is. She said as long as we keep it small, she would come out and probably wear a mask and do this. And I just want to make sure she's recognized for what she's donated. So
Vance, we'll work around her schedule, so you get it, you make it, you send it to us, and whoever's there can be there.
okay.
Trying to get 7 of us to agree on a date and a time.
Well, I'm going to shoot for maybe next Wednesday or Thursday morning. I'll see what works best for her, and then I'll shoot out an email, and hopefully we can get some of you there. That work?
Perfect.
Okay. Is that all?
I think so, go ahead.
Moving on, I've got an airport layout plan update for you. I wanted to kind of brief you on where we're at with this. This has been an ongoing project for the last 2 years now. So just to let you know what is an ALP, or an airport layout plan. The ALP serves as a critical planning tool, contains information used by the FAA to program future funding assistance and to monitor our airport's compliance and design standards and grant assurances. It determines the extent, type, and schedule of development to accommodate existing and future needs. It assesses the requirements for airside, which is your runways and your taxiways, et cetera, and the land side, which is our buildings and aprons and hangars, fuel facilities. Produces a set of drawings that depict the proposed development over a 20-year planning period. And our last ALP update was completed and approved by the FAA back in September of 2012. Our current 2021 ALP update was completed by our airport consultant, CNS Engineers, in March and submitted to FAA for final approval, which we just received final approval last Friday. Some of the projects listed in our ALP, which are also included in our CIP and the ASIP, which is the airport CIP, is our runway 826 design and construction, which is funded by state and local. Taxiway C and D design and construction, T-hangar design, apron design and construction, runway 1230 lighting and signage, design and construction, that one would be a federal, state, and local contribution. Taxiway A, signage and lighting, runway 1230 seal coat, design and construction, and our AWAS, our automated weather observation system. That's on our current 5-year short-term list. And the funding source, just so you're aware, that the state and local match, so on a state-funded project, the state would kick in 90%, we would match 10%, and then on the federal, state, and local, it would be a 91, roughly 4.5, with us kicking in 4.5, ADOT kicking in 4.5, and then the feds would cover the 91%. The intermediate projects, some of them on there that aren't on the CIP, but they're on our 20-year plan, would be heliport reconstruction, design and construction, the rehabilitation of taxiway E, the tie-down aprons. Those are some estimated costs for those projects. And then long-term, we have some major terminal building improvements, which would be just a local project funded by us, and then helicopter parking construction. And these are all estimated costs because they're well out into the future. And the total development costs over a 20-year period, you can see by this breakdown, the bottom line there is, we will end up with roughly $17 million worth of airport improvements for just over $1.8 million of our local funds over a 20-year period. In closing, we've focused more recently on our airport improvements and upgrades to our airport, which some of those will be entirely funded by our general fund because they're not eligible for our state or federal funding. These items include, our upgrading of the access gates out there, which is ongoing this year, constructing a new shade structure, which it's in this year's budget. We just received that. That'll be going up before the end of the summer. Design and construction of a water system that would provide fire protection to the airport, hangar renovations to the city hangar that's right next to the terminal building, as well as some minor improvements to the terminal with that project. Purchase of a new airport mower to keep our runways and taxiways clear, and then a complete review and analysis of our airport code, rules and regs, and the minimum operating standards, which is in our budget for this coming year. So that's kind of a brief rundown of what's in our airport layout plan. It's an essential item for us to get funding from the federal government on these projects. If it's in our ALP, then they ear tag money for our projects. So just wanted to let you know where we're at in that process, and we just had that approved. So if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Do you have any questions for Lance? Huh?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Mañana.
Going to take you for a ride tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and close our regular meeting and reconvene into a council work session. So let's go ahead and move right on into it. 18-1, the City of Safford's property discussion regarding property at 4 Cottage Street. John?
Mayor, members of council, I don't know why I just did that. We had a request from a local vendor, I guess realtor. I guess they're hungry for property. And so they asked if we would be willing to sell this property right here, which is 4 Cottage Street. You can see you got 11th Street, 12th Street, and then the Highway 191. Apparently, that was the site of a infestation. I guess the homeowner had a lot of cats. I think you're all familiar with that, and they were removed, and that property was demolitioned. And so right now, you have a vacant lot. So I simply am requesting to find out whether or not you are interested in selling that property. We'd get an appraisal on the empty lot, and then we'd do an invitation to bid.
When, I remember when that went down, and there was supposedly flooding issue as well on that area, and it was supposed to have been taken down and utilized as a issue for possible retention area. So I don't know how truth that is to it, or we just tore it down now and didn't do anything with it and made it into a vacant lot. I don't know.
Mayor, council, members of council, I did have that discussion with Lance. And again, at least preliminarily, I think the conclusion was that we'd be okay putting something on there, that the drainage is such that we could put a building on there. Certainly, we would look into that and make sure before we move forward. But I believe we had that discussion. I think we're okay. Yeah, so I think we're good to go in that regard.
I know that it's definitely a seller's market, and I don't think you should be just tied into one person. Of course, you have to do sealed bids, and so I'd be in favor of a sealed bid.
Yeah, we would do something that we call an invitation to bid. So we would put an ad in the paper listing a minimum amount that they could bid, and then they would provide bids to us. And again, we just did that on Sanchez Road. We didn't get any takers. We may actually re-advertise that one as well. But I figured, given the market and the fact that it's sitting there, I thought you guys, might want to move the property along and let it, instead of just letting it sit vacant.
I think so.
You okay with that? Okay, thank you.
Alma, come on back up for PSPRS.
Sorry, John, I got a little overly excited there.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Mayor and council, so I have for you a quick presentation on PSPRS. So this is our current amortization. If we continue what we're doing with the payments to PSPRS, you can see that we're currently paying about almost $700,000. In year 2045, it'll go up to about $1.8 million. Staff is proposing we go with a possible 25-year amortization, and that would be going with a bond. And you can see the blue line represents what our current payments would be if we did nothing, and the green would be the bond. Everything in between the blue and green would be expected benefit cash on a cash basis. I do want to just point out here that our current liability annually is about $700,000. So the difference between the bond payment and our current payment is what we would be paying additional going forward. So we would not continue paying the first column and the second column. It would be it would be just one or the other, and the savings is in the last column. I just want to, just a couple of final thoughts. So using the bond to pay off the pre-existing unfunded liability does not mean that there will not be changes in contributions to the fund going forward. However, by using the bond, the city will eliminate the unfunded liability and the rate of return penalty applied to it. So we would be managing the PSPRS changes in real time going forward. The last council meeting, we discussed a little bit of the expenses, so I did contact to find out what the expense and the fees would include. So the fees are typically included in the bond. $232,000 is an estimate of the cost of the issuance and underwriter's fees, and then $15,000 would be for the credit rating, and that's per rating agency. And the cost of the issuance and the underwriter includes the underwriter expenses, which is them analyzing, helping with the credit rating, and assisting with acquiring the best interest rates, and also selling the bonds. We also would pay for bond, that includes the bond counsel, underwriters counsel, the official statement of preparation, and the bond trustee services. So all of those services would be included in that $232,000. That's the end of my slideshow. I did reach out to some entities to find out what are some of the other councils and other entities' comments and thoughts on the bond process. And overall, it sounds like it's the same issues that they have, that we're talking about today. I want to say that I reached out to about 4 different entities. So I'm not aware of a whole lot of people who aren't doing it. It seems like more and more the entities are coming on board with moving forward with bonds.
Could you give me the entities you reached out with?
I reached out to the City of Wilcox, Oro Valley, Graham County, Town of Thatcher, and I had discussion with someone regarding the City of Tucson, but I wasn't able to speak with City of Tucson directly. I also reached out to the Navajo Nation and was unable to speak with someone there as well.
Wilcox, Oro Valley.
Graham County, Town of Thatcher. And I spoke to I didn't speak directly with City of Tucson, I just spoke with someone who was familiar with their situation. So City of Tucson and City of Phoenix are a little bit different because they are larger entities, but they are still part of the PSPRS as a whole, so.
They essentially do their own investments, as
Correct.
opposed to us where we give it to the state and they invest it.
Well, I know that I'll just say it, I'm not in favor of going to a bond. I'm in favor of staying where we're at, moving right along. From my interactions with PSPRS, and I meet with mayors on that as well through telephone and through emails. And it's definitely their staff is presenting it to the council, and it's up to the council to move forward with them. And staff is definitely always looking and always recommending, what they feel is an entity, but then it falls under falls, of course, onto the laps of the elected officials, and they're the ones that have been holding firm a little bit right now. And it's just my personal take. I would still hold firm myself.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Is that with the hopes that there'll be a different solution at some point?
What, they're really counting on legislation to do something, and we know how slow they work. So that's their whole point. They're hoping that legislation will come through and reduce the amount. But, I mean, what's kind of scary is it's a Republican held legislation now, and they're not jumping on it, so. But, I don't know, I just hate to, so that's what, did that answer your question?
Yes. In other words, the only, I guess I'm assuming the only thing that would be better than basically refinancing is if we got a bailout.
Exactly.
And how do we know if we are or if we aren't? I realize that's a risk we're taking, but a bad analogy is if I had student loans right now and the cash maybe to pay them off, maybe I'd be waiting around to see what the administration did before I dove into paying.
Right.
But how much hope is there that this is gonna happen?
Right, that's just it.
And I'm just on the opposite side there, where I'm for going for the bonds. It's gonna have to be paid, could be issued, we'd know what the payments are, right? And right now, if you take into consideration along the way too, interest rates are gonna be going up. They're fairly favorable at this time, so that's where I'm at.
And I agree with that, again, without having any better assurance of what kind of help we can get, and if we're not gonna get any help, then it'd be irresponsible to pass a $15 million worth of savings and pay $1.7 million in 20 years. When the payment's $100,000 more than we're currently paying.
The thing is I wanna, if the council wanted to go that direction, I wanna make sure that that doesn't get us into something to where if we ever had to go for a bond during this bond payoff, is that going to affect us to where we couldn't get another bond that is needed somewhere else down the line that we don't see right now, and all we're seeing is this side of an apple right now, and we want to take a chunk out of that. Going the direction we're going right now, it just shows us as a debt, and we're showing that we're continuing making that payment. So if you could kind of assure us that that this wouldn't affect bonds going out further, then you might be able to convince me, but go ahead, John.
Well, there's a couple things. One is that, you know, it all depended on what we were doing, right? Whatever the other bond was. When we did the analysis, the ratios that we had were very high. So for example, our revenue to debt ratio, I think, was up around 11 to 1, dropping down, I think, to somewhere, let's say, to 7 to 1. Now, when they do the analysis and they do the assessment for the bond, if you're at 4.5 to 1, that's considered excellent. So again, in terms of future usage, of course, it will have an impact. But remember, we're paying $650,000, let's say, today. So the additional cost to us would be another $150,000. And yes, we would have that bond on there, which would impact what's left for us to bond for. But our ratios are quite good. So it would all depend on whatever it was that other option was. If we were funding a fire station or a rec center or whatever we decided to do, it would be predicated on the size of that project. But right now, our ratios are very, very high.
You said our contribution went down, but we're gonna continue to pay it on our debt. Now, how long is that gonna last, just this year?
Mayor Counts, Councilman Lopez, that's really an unknown factor. Every year they do an actuarial study, and every year that percentage will change. For fiscal year 2022, it did go down by a little over 1% maybe, but there's no guarantee that that would continue. But it was my recommendation to keep it at the current percent, and whatever that additional amount was, it would be used to pay a lump sum, along with those 3 drop employees that we had that were not required to pay, but it was about an additional almost $200,000 between the drop employees and that 1% that we could send to pay down. In speaking with, I believe it was Oro Valley, I believe, did pay a lump sum for a couple of years, and they felt that lump sum didn't help very much for them. But of course, their debt is about $25 million unfunded.
So you're saying we went down 1%, they forgave 1% for 2021, right, or 2021,
2022.
22. And what was your previous? Have you seen, has it been trickling down, or has it gone up a few years?
Mayor Couts, it has been going up every year. This is the first year since I've been here. Actually, it would be the second time, because I want to say in year 2 that I was here, we actually approved a resolution that extended our amortization out about 5 years, I believe. And so that was to help with those annual payments, to reduce that amount that we were paying annually. So we would have reached that $1.4 million or that $1.8 million sooner, basically, so that helped us to spread out our amortization longer, have smaller payments annually, but we were still seeing that growth every year.
And that 200,032, that's what they wanna charge us to do this for us?
Mayor Counts, Councilman Lopez, yes, it would be the 232 plus $15,000 per credit rating, or per credit rating agency.
And they want that up front?
So typically that's included in the bond.
Included in the bond.
Correct.
That's why after you do your councilmanship, you gotta come and do a third party thing like this. That's how you make your money.
So the $250,000 will be tacked on to the bond. Well, 232,000.
232,000, yes. Plus the 15,000. And again, that doesn't have to be part of the bond. If we wanted to utilize general fund balance, we could pay those, the issuance and underwriters and credit rating. We could pay that and not include it in the bond. That is also an option.
Councilman Anazola, how do you feel about this?
And the boat that you are, what you're talking about there, I don't want to see us going to a bond.
Councilman McGoy, how do you feel?
You know me, I want to get it paid off.
initially, my thought was, yes, let's do it. Let's do it right now. I'd like somebody to explain to me, and I'm not asking for it today, but if I understand correctly, if, as Vice Mayor said, interest rates are getting ready to go up, how does that affect, and I know it does, if the PSPRS earns good interest, then our payback drops. Is that not correct? Whatever the fund earns greater than whatever their 7 or 8% that they need, if interest did go up substantially,
It's that
I think it would change the formula enough that we need to look at it from that direction. Am I way off base?
Well, the where we are now is that we have an unfunded liability that they charge us 7% on, right? So whatever that amount is, it's like getting charged on a credit card.
Right.
Now, the other side of that is the market part. And if we're paying, let's say, 3% interest on a bond, their performance would have to drop below 3% for it to cost us additional funding. If the fund performs better than expected, obviously our bond payments would stay the same, but our contributions to the retirement system would be reduced, just like they were apparently reduced this year. So again, I think part of the confusion is that the unfunded liability is seen as something separate, when it's all part of that overall pool that you're maintaining, and those contribution rates are based on that. You just have an additional charge of that 7% based on the unfunded portion. Is
But
that-
if interest rates went to early 80s rates, where people were paying, 10, 12, 15%, does it work the other way? Does it work for us?
No. The higher the
So-
interest rate, the worse off you are, because you're paying more for borrowing the money. Therefore, the returns have to be higher.
But I think the saying is we're not borrowing the money. Is that correct? If we didn't borrow the money, interest rates go up, then the performance of the state's pool would be better.
Yes.
Possibly.
Yes.
our cost.
Right,
That's-
and again, they've provided information. So for example, over a 10-year period, I think performance was just below 7%. 20-year period, it was about 3.53%, but that included the dot-com bubble, and it also included the biggest recession we've had since the Great Depression. 30 years, it was something like 13%. So they're averaging their returns over a period of time, but even in the worst-case scenario, the returns would still be on par with what we would owe on the bond, which would leave us in good shape. And that's got to be one of the worst downturns we've ever experienced. So again, the likelihood of that happening again are minimal. And I think that even though we look at their 7% return on investment number, if you look at those numbers over decade periods, it's kind of around that number. I know we think kind of cynically, I guess, because why wouldn't we with our experience with the state, but it really is a number that is reasonable when taken over an extended period of time. Because they're not going to jump your rate, your contributions up and down right away. It's going to be this moving average that does that. Does that answer your question?
You know me, I don't even know what my question is. I just know that there's a piece of this puzzle that changes depending on the interest rate. We've been sitting here, you borrow money for nothing for so long that I don't know, when we go back to the real world, I don't know what it's gonna be like.
Right, your interest rate will be fixed on the bond.
But if
And-
we don't do this,
Right.
we'll be subject to that. If we're having to pay back anything, if they're making if we're paying 7.5 and they're gaining 15, are we gaining or are we losing? That's all I need to know.
You're gaining at that point.
Well, and that's where I think we're going, so that's why my hesitancy. I didn't have a hesitancy until I started reading about that, and the more I read, the more confused I get, so.
But remember, there's two rates. There's an interest rate in terms of what the bond charges, And you're talking about a return on investment, right?
Right. I'm saying if we don't do the bond
Yes.
and interest rates go up, I'd like to see how that plays out.
Well, it depends which interest rate is going up. Is it
He's
the
made a
interest
rate
rate?
of I'm saying, we're not gonna borrow any money. If we do not borrow any money
Right.
and interest rates go up, how does that play out? Period.
But again,
Not talking about going to borrow money later.
Right.
I'm just saying, if we stick with whatever their payment is,
Right.
that payment's gonna come down if interest rates go up.
But again, your interest rate, it's about investment, right? And
I
it's about the
understand
rate
that.
of
I just-
return that you're getting.
Well, you're trying to explain to me how interest rates work, and I wanna know how PSPRS works.
Right, and what I'm saying
They're
to you is
different.
an interest rate isn't a rate of return on the investment. So what you're
But the
talking
difference
about is,
between the two makes a difference in what we pay.
right, but you said you were borrowing. You said you were talking about the rate of return on it if we did not borrow. Okay.
I guess the question is, what would the rate of return need to be for staying with our unfunded liability? What kind of rate of return would we need for it to be smart to stay?
In excess of 7%.
And significantly, though.
No, I mean, I think you want to break even or better, and then you're in good shape. I think.
But that wouldn't significantly affect our unfunded liability, our current unfunded liability.
No.
Right, so if rate of return went to even 10%, that would help us on our year-to-year. But this massive sum of unfunded
It's still
liability
there.
is still there.
And really, and again, I mean, we can kind of massage this and try to, you've got different types of things. You've got the actuarial, which is whatever your exposure is in the pool. You've got the market, which could be rate of return on the investments. It could be whatever the market's driving if you borrow. That's one of the reasons we're trying to do it early. Interest rates are down, but they're on the way up. The bottom line is that right now is an opportunity to potentially borrow for those funds. You've seen what the payback is on the bond. You've seen what the payback projection is based on the state numbers. They're significantly different. And again, I'm not saying that you have to go forward and do it. I'm saying that the risks are lower. It's not that there aren't any. And we could kind of dance about, if the interest rate was this or that. Right now, we're carrying about $13 million in unfunded liability. The performance on PSPRS has been, even in the worst case, probably what we would pay interest on the bond, which means we would break even. Our payments are lower, they're locked in, they don't skyrocket near the end, which is gonna hit your budget at some point operationally. So there are a lot of things here that make sense financially, okay? Do we know what the future holds? Will there be a bailout? I don't know. Right now, no one's talking about it. Who's gonna do it? Is the state gonna do it? It doesn't seem like it. State's busy cutting taxes right now. So again, the conditions are right for us to borrow on it, and it looks good based on the numbers today. But we can always come up with different scenarios and keep kind of working with those numbers and, but right now, the risk looks pretty low, which is why you see a large number of other entities pursuing that solution.
If it were my personal budget at home, I would be doing it. I would be bonding. I'd be, refinancing would be the more appropriate term
Right.
on a personal, if I were doing it personally, but I would do it.
And right now, for staff, the real issue is, do we go? If we go, we need to budget for it. If we don't go, we don't need to budget for it. So we can budget for it and play it safe and decide even, later on if we want to move forward or not. I mean, we could even bring Stifel in themselves, the vendors, and these guys are financial advisors. They can tell you, maybe answer your questions better than I can if you want to take another bite at this apple. But we need to be able to put that money in the budget. We don't necessarily have to use it, but we need some kind of guidance as to whether to put it in there. And maybe the answer is to bring them down and let them come at it with you from the financial perspective. I had an opportunity to talk to them on several occasions. They're really good. Again, that's your call if you want to get more answers from maybe some of the questions you're asking. If I'm not being clear on the answer, maybe they could do a better job for you.
Councilman Silver, you go.
In my
One thing, I wasn't gonna say anything tonight, kinda messed me up on that.
I'm sorry.
Question, but, I just don't wanna get involved in something that's gonna have an impact on our ability to, come up with money that we have to have later. But again, we don't know that situation will arise. The other thing, said 15,000, for the credit rating, per rating agency. How many agencies do they, go
Mayor,
to?
Councilman Seal, typically, they suggest 2.
So it'd be $30,000 then.
Correct.
But they don't have.
But they don't have to.
And I think what they did was they reduced their original fee from 30 to 15, saying they would go to one agency at this point. But again, I mean, you have to be comfortable with making that decision. All we're asking for is direction so we can move forward with the budget. Either way, it's your call, whether you want us to put it in or not. And that was kind of the point of tonight, so you guys would have an opportunity as a group to give us direction so we could either put it in the budget or not put it in the budget.
So it's not in the budget right now?
No, it is not.
So what
Correct.
will so you're asking for $300,000, basically, I'm rounding up, to be put in the budget, so what's that going to increase our budget to?
You were asking for 15 million or 14
Oh,
million.
you're asking for that to, even if we don't spend it?
Right. Well, yeah, you have to have the appropriation in order to
Holy
make the
freak.
expenditure. Yeah. But again,
I'm in favor of that.
remember that you would have to be relying on the out, so if you put $14 million in your budget, you have to have the bond proceed to offset it. So the impact in year one on your budget would be 0 because you're predicating the expenditure of that 14 million on the bond proceed itself. But we would never go forward with that without any kind of council approval. So again, if you're not comfortable with doing it, that's fine, we won't put it in. If you do want to have it in there, either to move forward or just to have it as a safety net, you can put it in, but it would never be expended without council approval.
I think it should be in the budget for safety.
I think you have to put it in there in case we decide, I mean, we can't wait another year to decide. We gotta,
Right.
if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it
Right.
relatively soon, so you about gotta put it in the budget, whether we spend it or not.
Right, and again, it can only be spent, we would have to come back to you with all that, the bond issuance and everything, so you would have to approve that expenditure. And that 14 million is predicated on that external revenue source. We don't have the internal revenue to cover it.
That's been something we've done many times in the past. I can remember for several years, 8 or 10 years ago, there was like a $5 million item in the budget, I think, to build like a police station and fire station. But that was only if we got grants that they were planning on
Right.
applying for. So they would put like a $5 million, because you have to be able to offset it, so send a $5 million grant or a loan and $5 million.
Right, so it's
not
predicated
anything
on
that we
external.
haven't done before,
Right.
just not this dollar amount.
Would council be interested in having the vendor come down and do a presentation?
I have a problem. The vendor's gonna be the one to make the money.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'd rather hear it from someone else.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want
fair
no vendor
enough.
down here.
So is it my understanding that we're gonna put it in as a placeholder or not?
That's right.
Put it in as, I guess,
And then, again, in order to expend those funds, we would have to come back to you and get approval, so those funds aren't gonna go in and then,
make sure that's
you
in the
know,
minutes.
almost
Tammy,
gonna
you
build
hear
your
that?
dream house with
It
it.
has to come back before the council. There's been a lot of fun stuff go through before, so make that happen. Vice Mayor,
Let's go home.
all those in favor?
Could you write that down, Sabrina?
Could have been worse.
She fell asleep halfway through the meeting.
Could you write that down, Sabrina?
He's calling you out.
Got a blue stamp.